This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
Becky Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore! Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.
This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
Okay, everybody, it is time for your SummerSlam, your official 2023 SummerSlam preview and prediction show. I have Anthony DeMarco with me, who currently is co-hosting with me, but normally is on the current state of WWE every single Monday night, but we transferred the night to tonight so you guys could get a dose of us and be able to hear what our thoughts are, previews, predictions, possible returns, all that kind of good stuff that's swirling around the news wire. But Anthony, welcome to the show, and are you excited for this pay-per-view?
You know what? I've just been conditioned now to be excited for pay-per-views, even when the build doesn't warrant it, because as we've talked about multiple times, under the Triple H regime, every single pay-per-view, even with bad builds, has delivered. Like, the weakest pay-per-view, I guess you could say, under the Triple H regime was the Extreme Rules pay-per-view, which was, just 3 months into his run as chief content officer, where you had no world title match. I think the main event of that was the pit fight between Riddle and Rollins, and then you obviously had the subsequent return of Bray Wyatt. But even that was a solid pay-per-view. I think they opened up the card with the six-man street fight between the Brawling Brutes and Imperium. So even the lower end of pay-per-views have been really good the last 12 or 13 months under Triple H. And with SummerSlam being 100% one of the top pay-per-views of the calendar year for WWE and the biggest pay-per-view since WrestleMania, depending whether or not you count Crown Jewel or any Saudi Arabia event, I am excited because I think WWE is going to pull out all the stops.
It's a good way of looking at it, because how many times have you and I and others come out of pay-per-views going, wow, that was so much better than the build. It's just, like you said, we've been conditioned at this point. It kind of is a self-hype machine, because while some of the programs aren't great, and the go-home shows, I think we've kind of, I just need to just say this, the go-home shows for a long time, not just in the Triple H regime, but even prior to that, have never really been the go-home shows that we used to get, 5, 10, 15 years ago, where it'd be a boiling point. Things just kind of lollygag into the event. Things don't feel like they're at a boiling point anymore, usually, for the go-home shows to events. But after the events, we are always left going, wow. And that's a credit to the talent. That's not a credit to creative. I shouldn't say that, because creative does obviously come up with the outcomes, but the story and the journey to get there is done 100% by the talent. So that's a credit to the talent showing what they can do in the ring. And even when a storyline going in is crappy or really people feel indifferent about it, they come out going, that was so much better than I expected. Now, the one challenge that I would imagine that this PLE is going to have that the last three didn't since WrestleMania is that it's not in front of an international crowd. We're back in the United States. The bar is now lower with the crowd reactions. So while the crowd reaction will still be from a United States, I guess, perspective anyway, will be a little higher. The typical PLE reaction we've gotten from May, June, and July in the PLEs, it's going to be a lot lower. We had Saudi Arabia, we had the UK, we had London, right? We had Dominican Republic, or Puerto Rico. So these are going to be fans that are loud, but do you think it's going to take away from the show, as we've been conditioned the last 3 months, to hear these just unbelievable crowds? Do you think coming away that we may feel a little bit down on the crowd just based on how much insanity we've heard the last 3 months?
I don't think so, because at least with this event, and I guess you could say that about Saudi Arabia and in London, where they were in stadiums as well, typically when it's a stadium show, just the sheer quantity of people will usually make it feel very, very significant. Like, it's not like they're doing a pay-per-view in an arena. And now that I think about it, when was the last arena pay-per-view that they had in the United States? Was it Survivor Series? Was Survivor Series held in a stadium or an arena? I think it was an arena. So I would imagine it was Survivor Series, the last arena pay-per-view they had in the US.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. So you're right. The volume should make up for it, but also if it's a stadium, the lot of the noise can escape through the roof that doesn't exist. I don't know if Ford Field has a retractable roof. I don't think it does. But anyway, let's just dive into the card because we got 8 matches to go through here. Obviously, guys, we're going to talk about possible returns. We know all the names that are floating out there. We'll get to those as we roll through here. But starting with the Battle Royal, this Slim Jim SummerSlam Battle Royal. It's a 20-man Battle Royal. It doesn't seem. And again, guys, we have not seen SmackDown. That we're recording this on a Thursday, so if something changes on Friday, we don't know about it. But doesn't look like anything's actually on the line. It just seems kind of one of those battle royals, the catch-alls for people that don't have anything really going on. That's what these men are going to be doing. Right now, the only confirmed participants are Chad Gable, Otis, Shinsuke, Ciampa, Sheamus, and LA Knight. So this one, as LA Knight has been dealing with the last few pay-per-views where he's the heavy favorite, he has not come out on top in the heavy favorites. This one, I'm going to say he has to come out on top. I understand I said that the last time, but this one he really does, because if he doesn't, I mean, if he can't win a battle royal, the kind of a throwaway match that honestly may actually be put on the pre-show, I mean, then I don't know what we're doing here. We have reached that point. We are now, as you and I have talked, I think we are now at that point. We're not approaching it anymore. We are at the point where WWE can no longer do the pushing him by not looking like we're pushing him strategy and routine. We are now here, and I think this will propel LA Knight, at least in a baby step, to the next thing where he could say, I won the Battle Royal, I want this or that. He has some kind of significant victory under his belt. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're at the point where you have to throw the fans a bone, and it doesn't have to be a massive bone. And I think you and I have kind of been in lockstep with that you don't have to make him world champion tomorrow or WWE champion tomorrow, but you have to put him on some meaningful path. And, just me personally, I think that just the fact that they haven't given LA Knight a meaningful feud or a meaningful program since the Bray Wyatt stuff back in the winter, that wasn't even to benefit or elevate LA Knight. That was to elevate Bray Wyatt. It's crazy how, 6-7 months later, how the two different paths each of those two guys have taken. And LA Knight has just kind of been fly by night, no pun intended, and just kind of in this match, losing important matches, winning meaningless matches. And I think that it doesn't even necessarily have to be a title. It just has to be a path. And the Battle Royal would be a good start. But what they do after that with that catapultation of him, I don't even know if that's the word, but I made it one. But I think giving him that catapult off of not a big win, but more of a significant win at a big time pay-per-view. I know that Battle Royals don't mean anything typically, but I don't know if WWE could attach something to Battle Royals. It guarantees you a non-world title opportunity. Like you can challenge for the tag title or one of the mid-card titles, just something like that to give their something of significance on the line. But it's better than nothing, right? And I heard you mention that would you have rathered him challenge for the US title on SmackDown or in the Battle Royal on SummerSlam? And it's a valid question. For me, I would have probably rathered the U.S. title just because I think he's in need of a meaningful feud, and he really hasn't had a clear-cut direction since Bray Wyatt. But if he wins the Battle Royal, which he should, that's my prediction, I think he's going to win the Battle Royal just because I don't think that they could stand or afford to make him lose again because, as you mentioned, they are at that point. But it would be a good stepping stone for him and something they could kind of use to have him bounce off into something more significant.
This is the starting point for LA Knight. I can't think of a more just foundational victory than this. This is not a staple victory. It's not one that we're going to remember per se. There's nothing on the line other than pride, and that's it. But if LA Knight doesn't win this, I don't know what they're doing. I really don't. To me, if he doesn't win this, they're trying to get too cute. I think that they're trying to stretch this strategy of him getting over without trying to get him over is going to run out of steam. And this, to me, is it. Not that things are going to crash and burn, but I think we've reached that crossroads, and if they don't do it, I think fans are going to get angry, disinterested, and maybe turn cold on this. And I don't want that to happen. Nobody wants that to happen. So this is the starting point, the starting blocks for LA Knight to get to that next level. Like you said, U.S. title, perfect. I thought that he should have been there. You thought he should have been there to begin with, but perhaps this is the one that gets him to say, talk to Adam Pearce on the following Friday and say, hey, I won the Battle Royal. I should be getting something out of this. There's a way to do it, and this is the starting point for LA Knight. There's just no other person that needs it. Sheamus doesn't need it. Ciampa doesn't need it. Nakamura doesn't need it. Otis, Gable, whoever the hell else the other 16 people are, 15 people are, don't need it. There is no one else here that needs it other than LA Knight. So, all right, I'm going to mention the next match and then toss it to you. Ronda Rousey, Shayna Baszler, MMA rules match. Go ahead.
Not really sure what they mean by MMA rules. I guess they're going to try and mimic what they did with Cain Velasquez and Brock in 2019. I mean, look, I think they're both good workers. Obviously, these two know each other. I think that they've done a good job building it, which is a far cry from what I would have said a few weeks ago. I think they did a hell of a job with those video packages. Both of them have legitimacy behind their names as real-life badasses in amateur wrestling and in mixed martial arts. I'm going to say it's Shayna Baszler. There's a lot of rumors floating around about what the future holds for Ronda Rousey and whether or not this is her swan song in professional wrestling. So I'm saying Shayna Baszler, and I'm actually looking forward to it because of the build that they've had. Not sure how the result is going to be because of the complexity of having an MMA rules match in WWE. Obviously, now that they're owned by the same company, UFC and WWE, that is, it probably will allow them some more, I guess, intel from the MMA side of Endeavor. But I really am looking forward to this, surprisingly enough, and I think Shayna Baszler is going to come out on top.
I'm with you on that. Now, if this is a multi-month program, I might lean Rousey, but the problem is that this does seem to be, at least for the time being, Ronda Rousey's final match for the foreseeable future. That's the reports coming out. Of course, those are just what we're hearing from the major sites. And it could be that Ronda Rousey is going to return towards WrestleMania 40. I don't know how she, as you get towards SummerSlam, you're already kind of peeking down the road a little bit to WrestleMania 40. I don't know how she wouldn't want to be a part of that and finally get to Becky Ronda one-on-one, for God's sakes. They need to have that before she goes away, but I mean, that's just my own personal preference. So this match, I don't know what they mean either. I was thinking they were going to do a fight pit match like they did with Rollins and Riddle late last year. I was thinking that's where they were going, but yeah, this MMA rules match, I don't like when they try to bring in a sport in which you're actually trying to hurt your opponent into a sport where you're trying to work with your opponent. It's oil and vinegar, or oil and water rather, as they say. And this could be disastrous. I continue to say that. I hope it's not. I'm not rooting for it to be a disaster, but when you're actually trying to make the gimmick of the match the opposite purpose of a professional wrestling match and try to make it look like they're hurting each other when they're really not, and you can see they're pulling punches, but then calling it MMA, it has the potential to be disastrous. I mean, of course, I'm thinking of Cain Velasquez and Brock Lesnar. That was just an absolute abomination. It was bad. It was embarrassing. Cain Velasquez, I mean, it looked like my 5-year-old son could have kicked his ass. I mean, he just didn't look good. Even though, I mean, he's legit badass. We know that. But the visual wasn't good that he was taking down Brock. And it just wasn't my favorite. So I am worried about the quality of this match from just a logistical standpoint of how are you going to... It would be like them putting in pro wrestling rules in a UFC fight and trying to do... Like, it just is... It's two things. I understand Endeavor. It's all under the same umbrella, but that doesn't mean you need to mix them. It's a dangerous thing to do. Maybe they'll pull it off, but are you worried about that at all?
Oh, yeah, 100% with the execution. This is a weird thing, kind of like the reverse under the Triple H era, where I'm more worried about the execution than I am about the build. And I think that the build has been good. I think the legitimacy behind both of these women is making me look forward to this match and maybe give it the benefit of the doubt in the meantime. But no, honestly, we saw what we saw from Cain, Velasquez, and Brock back in 2019, and both of those guys are real-life badasses, and Brock is an incredible worker, arguably the most underrated worker in the history of professional wrestling, and underrated, not best, underrated. And I think that their execution and their result was, satisfactory at very best. And I am worried about that with Ronda and Shayna. But like I said, I think with the build that they've got me, giving them the benefit of the doubt in the interim.
I think what's going to happen, if I'm going to be realistic here, when they say MMA rules, what that really means, I would imagine, is they're going to do rounds, right? They'll probably do whatever the round 3-minute rounds or whatever they are in UFC. And there's just going to be a lot more punching and kicking and striking. Like that's probably like takedowns and mound, like pound and what do they call it? Ground and pound. Like there's probably going to just be more punches and kicks that are all just pulled punches and kicks. And again, this is no different really than a pro wrestling match. You're just using punches and kicks more than you would actual suplexes and ankle locks and that kind of thing. So I don't know if there's really going to be any difference here other than just, okay, they're going to do rounds and that's it. Like they didn't say it's going to be in an octagon. They just said MMA rules. That's a very vague term to use. So that's probably, in my mind, what it's going to look like is that. So any other thoughts before we get to the IC title?
No, I think that's pretty much, we kind of gave it a good coverage going into it. And now we just got to hope that the execution is as good as the build. That's the only thing that we could really do.
Agreed. And I'm also going Shayna, by the way. I didn't make my pick. Shayna is also my pick. Okay, Intercontinental Championship, Gunther versus Drew McIntyre for the IC title. I'm not going to give my pick other than to say this is the first real true threat to Gunther's run as Intercontinental Champion with Drew here. Tough pick, but I'll let you choose.
This is probably the toughest time I had with my predictions because, as you said, Drew McIntyre is a legitimate threat to Gunther. And I don't know if he's had a legitimate threat before. Maybe Sheamus and Drew back at WrestleMania, but even at that, it never really felt like his run was in jeopardy. Riddle didn't threaten it. The likes of, we're going back a bit now, but Ricochet didn't threaten it. Sheamus didn't threaten it. But Drew, he's still looking for that big win. That big win that was taken away from him because of COVID 3.5 years ago at WrestleMania 36. And it isn't a world title, but they have done a hell of a job building up the Intercontinental Championship. And Drew has a history with that title during his first run with the company. And I really do think that he would be an amazing Intercontinental Champion. But in this instance, I'm going with Gunther just because I think he's within striking distance of the Honky Tonk Man for the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. I don't know how far away he is. I feel like we went over this and it's sometime during the fall, maybe in October. So I'm picking Gunther. That being said, and this is kind of like an asterisk beside it, I do think Drew McIntyre will eventually be the guy to dethrone him as Intercontinental Champion. I think this is a program you could probably string across 3 or even 4 pay-per-views. So I think Gunther gets this victory, but I do think eventually Drew is the one to strip him of that IC title when Gunther does eventually pass Honky Tonk Man.
I'm going to go Gunther too, and I could see WWE getting tempted by Drew. He just returned. He's hot. He feels a little, he doesn't feel a little fresh. He feels much more fresh than he did prior to his exit from his injury and getting healed up. So I'm going to stick with Gunther as I look at the actual number of days. And this is the only reason that I'm choosing Gunther. And not the only reason, because there's also rumors of a Gunther Brock Lesnar match at WrestleMania 40. That seems to be what they're eyeing, and if that's the case, you want to kind of start to make Gunther look unbeatable, and that's another reason why. But right now, okay, this is as of July 28th, so we'll have to add a few dates to this. But as of July 28th, we had Gunther at 414 days. Now that means that the Honky Tonk Man is at this point 35 days ahead of Gunther at 453 days. So really, he only has to get to the next pay-per-view, I think, pretty close to that. So we're getting very close now to the point where all they have to do is keep the belt on Gunther for another month, and then we could claim he is the longest-running Intercontinental Champion of all time. They probably are going to choose that path instead of Drew winning. We'll have Gunther. I'm sure Giovanni Vinci or Ludwig Kaiser are going to get involved, cost Gunther the match or cost Drew the match. I just think for the biggest reason being they are this close to having Gunther being able to claim that he's the longest running Intercontinental Champion. It's too tempting. And honestly, it's a hell of an accolade. A hell of an accolade to be able to say that. Now, that 453 days seems puny in comparison to Roman Reigns, who is overshadowing every record that everyone is compiling right now. But still, I think that would be a really great thing to put on Gunther's resume for his entire career, that he's the longest running IC champion of all time.
Yeah, and like I don't know if you feel the same way, but could you see Drew dethroning him as Intercontinental Champion after he surpasses Honky Tonk Man?
Yeah, Drew's an excellent candidate. I could also see if Big E eventually returns here, and I think if there were going to be a return from Big E at some point, that he would fit nicely into the Intercontinental title picture. Obviously, he's been WWE champion before, but if they don't go with Drew, I could see if Big E comes back in the next month or two, he could be the one to take it from Gunther as well. So yeah, either Drew or Big E.
Yeah, I think so, but it really depends with Big E. But I do feel like they owe Drew a big victory, because for some reason, obviously we know the reason as to why he probably hasn't gotten that victory since, but I don't think he's held a singles championship since losing the WWE championship in early 2021. So eventually I want Drew to get that victory, but just SummerSlam isn't the right fit. But I do think that this is a program you could string across several pay-per-views. Absolutely.
And Drew does deserve that victory. His timing constantly he has the worst possible timing, and not of his own fault, but being able to get that victory in front of fans, which he has yet to get. So, all right. So we both are still in the same boat here as we look at the Intercontinental Championship. So right now we've picked the same people for the Battle Royal, the MMA rules match, and the IC title. Let's see if that continues here with Ricochet and Logan Paul. Go ahead.
It's Logan Paul. This one's very easy for me. Like, I love what Ricochet has done here. I think you've mentioned it. He's been built up more in 2 or 3 weeks than he has in 2 or 3 years prior. But Logan Paul hasn't won a match since SummerSlam of last year, I believe, against The Miz. And since then, he's had how many singles matches? I want to say 2 against Roman and Seth. Rightfully lost both of those. But Logan Paul, as bad as it is to say, is the bigger star here, has more tread left on the tire, has a higher ceiling. You could go down and down the list. I really like what Ricochet has done here. I think the match is going to be phenomenal, but it's a slam dunk. It's going to be Logan Paul. It should be Logan Paul. It has to be Logan Paul.
Yeah, no, I'm with your pick. I'm going to also choose Logan Paul to win, but not as confidently. And the reason I say that is a couple of reasons. Number one, Logan Paul got the best of Ricochet going into the pay-per-view. Now, that is certainly not a hard and fast rule, but I'd say the majority, not the overwhelming, but the majority of the time, the person getting the advantage going into the event doesn't win. Certainly not a rule of thumb, but it's prominent. So there's that. Also, Ricochet has gotten more support and caught more fire over the last 2 weeks than the last 2 years. So perhaps they're thinking they have something here with him. Ricochet's, he's not an old man either. I mean, he's certainly not as young as Logan Paul, but he's got a lot more mileage on his body, yes, but he still can perform at the highest of levels. He doesn't show any signs of wear and tear. So I'm still going with Logan Paul, I agree, but I could see them being tempted by Ricochet, and there's going to be a lot of holy S chants for this one, a lot of this is awesome chants, maybe a fight forever chant. This could be that. And honestly, I'm not even concerned about the quality. We know what the quality is going to be. I'm concerned about the actual health and safety of these men, because they know what level they've taken this to for expectations. We've seen what they can do, and seeing Logan Paul nearly break his neck the last time they met was a scary. I mean, yeah, sure, I don't like Logan Paul on a personal level either. There's a lot I don't like about him, but I think he's a great heel, and I have no problem with him being in WWE. But that all aside, I mean, they're two human beings, and I'm genuinely concerned that they're going to take risks that they don't need to take, just to raise the bar to that next level and give something the crowd will never forget. if that's the mentality, I'm genuinely going to be worried about like, just the health and safety of these two men. Do you think that that's a concern, or do you think that that is not something you're going to be looking at going, they'll be fine?
Honestly, I mean, with Ricochet, I've seen enough to just assume that he's going to be okay. And after that spot that they both took at Money in the Bank, I think Logan Paul has earned that benefit out too. Like, he may be the most naturally gifted athlete I've seen step seamlessly into wrestling ever. It's absolutely insane how athletic that guy is and how much of a natural he is. So honestly, I'm going to give them both the benefit of the doubt. I'm not worried for either of their health. Well, I am worried for their health, but I'm not worried that they're going to mess up and hurt themselves, if that makes sense. I just think that you can make the argument that they are the two most natural athletes in WWE right now. And that's crazy to say when you have the likes of Seth Rollins and AJ Styles and so on and so forth.
Agreed. Yeah, no, and they are professionals. They, WWE wouldn't be putting them together if they actually feared for the health and safety of both of these men. But inherently, I don't care how good you are. Inherently, they are going to be performing at a higher risk than the rest of the card because of the moves they're doing. Gravity doesn't discriminate. I mean, gravity doesn't discriminate. The laws of physics don't discriminate. You can be as talented in the world as you want to be, but you're inherently taking more risk the way and the style that these men are going to perform at. So that is just my concern. I'm just going to be keeping a keen eye on this. With a little bit of an air of safety on my mind, just because of what happened before and the way that both men wrestle. So anyway, I'm looking forward to it. We all know what it's going to be. It's going to be a highlight reel, which, again, it's been built around them having a viral match instead of them talking about caring about winning, which I don't. Anytime that happens, I'm never a fan. It should be about, hey, I'm going to beat you, I'm going to win. Instead, they're talking both about just putting on a great show. Not my favorite narrative going in. That should be a byproduct of what they do. I never like when it's the focus. It's like pulling back the curtain a little too much for me, but I don't know. Maybe does that bother you at all?
I guess, yeah, because it's kind of like when didn't Sasha Banks always used to say, "I want to tear the house down."
That, like, yeah, we're gonna make history. It's like, no. What about winning?
Yeah, and I agree. Like, why are you guys here? Is it not to win? Because that's when it kind of exposes the business as like a spectacle, like Cirque du Soleil, right? So I try and just bypass that, and I try and ignore it. But when you really break down like the actual comment, it does bother me for sure.
Yeah, I too. I just shut it off and I go, just shut up and can we talk about winning, right? But anyway, all right, let's get to a few more matches here. Let's talk about the tribal combat for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. This is also on the line here is the recognition of who the tribal chief is. Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso. I will just give my pick and then I'll toss it to you. I think this is also a no-doubter, kind of a slam dunk. Jey Uso loses and I think Roman Reigns retains. But there's a lot of X factors here and I'll just let you have the floor.
Yeah, you know what? I kind of went back and forth a little bit because I've seen reports of Roman Reigns taking a hiatus post SummerSlam, and that I think he's only advertised for one PLE, being Survivor Series, between now and 2024, and it's really, pardon me, a shame that that's the case, because if you really think about it, he hasn't been head to head with anyone but his fellow Bloodline members since WrestleMania with Cody Rhodes. And I really think that I'm craving like a Roman Reigns feud other than just the civil war within the Bloodline. I think you mentioned it on your week in review that while this has been awesome, the civil war angle, enough is enough. We have to move on. We have to move on to bigger and better things. And it feels like while it will be the end of the civil war angle with the Bloodline, that we still will have to wait to see the next step for Roman Reigns. So that's why I kind of thought for a bit, will they give it to Jey? Because Jey will maybe stick around and then he could have a short run with the title and then maybe drop it to an LA Knight or drop it to a returning Randy Orton or drop it to a Bobby Lashley or an AJ Styles or whoever. That's the only reason why I even given Jey Uso a slim of hope, just because he could have a short title reign and then drop it at the very next pay-per-view to one of the guys I just mentioned. But it just makes more sense to keep it on Roman Reigns. You still have tread left on that tire. What's happening with with Voldemort? Is he going to come back? there's still a lot of storytelling to be had with this version of Roman Reigns as the undisputed champion. It just sucks that it feels like we're going to have to wait till Survivor Series, if not later, to see the next chapter in Roman Reigns' career, in his next chapter as undisputed champion, and see his first program with someone not directly within the bloodline since WrestleMania.
We are now, I mean, as we talked about, this is 4 months now since he's defended his title last. 4 months. And that's not to say, as we've all known, the television storytelling between the bloodline and the Civil War and all that has been really good. But now we're in a post bloodline era, and that means Roman has to go outside and finally go outside of his bubble of the family, unless Dwayne comes back, which I'm still torn on if there's a possibility of that happening at SummerSlam. I'm leaning no. On that. I think that Grayson Waller is going to be the connection that brings him in. He continues to talk about him. And Grayson Waller continues to talk about him in promos, talk about it, or do the people's elbow. I mean, like, Grayson Waller right now seems to be that connection that's keeping this whole thing alive. But I don't think that The Rock appears here at SummerSlam. I'm saying no, but not an absolute no. But Roman retains. I'm with you there. Tribal combat obviously is just a fancy way to say no DQ. Right? Duh. I mean, it's just, tell me what the difference is between tribal combat and no DQ, and you can't. It's all just talking about a street fight. I mean, there's so many ways to say no disqualification. This is just a new way to say it, which is fine. It's marketing, makes sense. But Roman Reigns retains, and there is an argument that you laid out where Jay could win. But if Roman Reigns is going to take time off here and do what he does and not compete for or put his title on the line till Survivor Series, that's another 3 months, because that's in November. So now, I mean, that would mean that Roman Reigns would defend his title twice in 6 months. And that's just ridiculous. I understand that he's the heel champion and that you don't want him to be overexposed, but I mean, you've just taken it to the other extreme and inflated his numbers that we've talked about countless times here. But it is what it is. We've accepted it at this point. We're going to have to eat it whether we like it or not. I guess my question to you is, if it's not Dwayne, do you think anyone does come out while Roman Reigns is celebrating, that we all anticipate, holding up his championships? The fireworks are going off. It's the same old thing we've seen for 3 years now. Do you see anyone, Randy, Bray, anybody that maybe I'm not thinking of, coming out and identifying who Roman's next opponent is?
I mean, there's several candidates you could go with, and I think that's why it makes more sense to have Roman Reigns keep the championship, among others. You just brought up two, Bray and Randy. I really think Bobby Lashley is a good one. Bobby Lashley would probably pose the most serious threat during his title reign, with the exception of Drew and Cody Rhodes. I mean, he's forming what seems to be a new version of the Hurt Business with the Street Profits, so he would have some backup to kind of counterset or offset Solo Sikoa. But honestly, this is my other fear here, is that nobody's going to come out and Roman Reigns is just going to ride off into the sunset until November. And then, as we've said, going back, 15 months now, that we're just going to artificially tack months and weeks and days on to his title reign. And like you said, 6 months, 2 title defenses. I don't like this at all. And I think that's the only reason why I've tried to talk myself into picking Jay, even though I know it doesn't make that much sense, just because I don't want the WWE Championship to disappear. And it feels like until Survivor Series, it will. Maybe they could set something up with a Bobby Lashley, but I mean, Bobby Lashley hasn't really been a part of SmackDown since being drafted there in April. So are you going to have him confront Roman Reigns and not have an in-ring match until Survivor Series? Are you going to have a returning Randy Orton confront Roman Reigns and not have a match until Survivor Series? Ditto for Bray Wyatt. I mean, it's like, it's damned if you do, if damned if you don't, because if you take the belt off of Roman Reigns, you're ending the most historic title run arguably ever, and certainly in the last decade and a half, 2 decades. But if you keep the belt on him, yeah, down the road, you're going to get some really good matches, some really good segments, some really good stories. But in the interim and in the short term, there's going to be nothing going on in the main event scene. So, I mean, it's weird. I'm looking forward to the match, but no matter what the result is, I'm not looking forward to it because there just really seems to be no positive, unless the rumors are wrong and he isn't going on hiatus post SummerSlam. But assuming that the rumors are true, and historically going back 15 months, that has been the case with Roman Reigns post winning the Undisputed Championship against Brock at WrestleMania in 2022. I fear that even if he wins the championship and retains it, it will be several months before we see him against a fresh opponent.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. We're just going on assumption that these reports are true, that he's not actually going to compete again until Survivor Series and challenge anybody for the title. But here's the thing. It doesn't mean that, for example, Dwayne, if he comes out and stares down at Roman, gives him a rock bottom, or doesn't do anything physical, you kind of just have that final interaction of, hey, here's what's to come. They can easily just kind of talk about it over the next couple of months, and then eventually Roman will address it. Rock doesn't show up again for a little while. Again, because you have, 7 months, 8 months until the next time that they have to build it, or then until they actually have their match at Mania. So, again, that's all. There's a lot of assumptions going on here, but that's how you could do it. I mean, just because somebody returns, big name, whether it's Randy or Rock, and then just kind of give Roman like a warning shot and give him time to prepare. They certainly have no issues stringing out Roman's programs at all. This doesn't need to be at Payback. They could do it at what's the next one? Fastlane and then Survivor Series. So they could easily do that. Even if a big name returns, it doesn't exempt somebody from returning. It's Roman Reigns' run is not a traditional run. See, that's the thing too, is like this is a very unique run. And that means that if someone returns, it doesn't mean that that person has to be facing Roman at the next pay-per-view. We all know that's not Roman Reigns' schedule anymore. So I don't know. I guess I'm trying to talk myself into something exciting happening at the end of SummerSlam, as we kind of imagine him standing there. Paul Heyman's got the 2 belts, holding that up. Roman's got his one Universal WWE Universal Championship. And, maybe the show ends there, but I don't know. I can't imagine them ending the WrestleMania of the summer with just that visual that we've seen countless times before. So,
no, I agree with you. It's just, I really hope that he doesn't disappear completely. Like, if you don't want him to have a match until Survivor Series, that sucks in and of itself, because you have 2 pay-per-views between now and then. The next one is Payback, and then you have
Fastlane.
Is it
Fastlane?
And I don't know if there's a Crown Jewel somewhere mixed in. Usually there seems to be one in late October or early November. But I mean, if you're going to just leapfrog 3 pay-per-views and he's not going to wrestle again until late November, I don't know. It's kind of getting old. Like, he hasn't had a singles match since WrestleMania. Think about that.
And
he had the singles match in Mexico against Rey Mysterio at a house show, but I'm not counting that. He hasn't had a televised singles match since WrestleMania.
Yeah, if it didn't happen on television, it didn't happen. I mean, it's just the way it is. And not only that, but no one on SmackDown is even talking about the Universal Championship. Like, no one on SmackDown's even trying to chase it.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's like nobody has crossed paths with Roman Reigns other than his fellow Bloodline members since the Raw after WrestleMania, when they started the Brock and Cody Rhodes angle. Like, nobody has acknowledged him. The new guys on SmackDown haven't acknowledged him. Sheamus hasn't acknowledged him. Bobby Lashley, AJ Styles, LA Knight, nobody. Like Rey Mysterio, Santos, like it's like he doesn't exist.
I know. He's in his own. There's the Roman Reigns show, and then there's just everyone else on SmackDown, and everyone just pretends you're right. Like, Roman doesn't exist. Yeah.
And I don't want to crap on this because I love the Bloodline. I do think it's gotten a bit monotonous now with Jay and this and that. But again, that's only because like the Bloodline kind of just lives in their own bubble, aside from when the Usos fight someone from the outside. Solo was doing that for a bit, but now he's been attached with Roman Reigns at the hip. And I do like the content. It's great storytelling. It's phenomenal. but it's just gotten a bit redundant because it's the same thing. And we know that unless you're Solo or Paul Heyman or the Usos, you're not going to be seen with Roman Reigns on television. It's like he has I don't know. It's like he has like a 300-foot long meter stick, and he's just walking around, and they have to keep that radius from him, like other wrestlers. And it sucks because I like Roman Reigns. I think he's awesome. He's must-watch television. He's one of the best promos in WWE right now, and I don't say that lightly. His facial expressions, he's epic, but it's just like it has to be a bit different. And the fact that he hasn't had a singles match since WrestleMania is just it's non-negotiable. I'm sorry, it's non-negotiable. I'm not saying that he has to fight every single SmackDown or every second SmackDown even. Like, I do think there should be some benefit to being champion, and that should be a reduced work schedule. Don't tell that to Seth Rollins, though. But I mean, I don't know. The fact that he hasn't had a singles match since WrestleMania is absolutely insane to me.
There is a lot to be desired with the run. As great as the storytelling has been, and credit to all involved, the wrestlers and the writers and production, everybody. But it's time to try to change things up. It's time to move out of the family. It's time to give Roman Reigns a real opponent. And fine, you want to skip Payback. We've been accustomed to Roman skipping every other pay-per-view. But when you go multiple pay-per-views in a row now where he doesn't have a match of any note, and then doesn't have a singles match, and he's not defending his title, and no one on SmackDown is talking about it, it's a little much. So it's funny because those on SmackDown that were with Roman Reigns during the time that Raw didn't have a title were probably like, well, you know, even though we have a champion here, we might as well not have a champion here because he's in his own world. Like, it doesn't, you know, it's he's here, but he's not. So, like, sure, Raw doesn't have a champion. For all intents and purposes, neither do we. That's how I'd feel if I was on SmackDown. But so anyway, yeah, the dynamic needs to change. And I'm not saying, like you said, Roman needs to compete at every house show and be there at every SmackDown. No. I don't mind that he's there every 3 SmackDowns. I really don't. Or even more to that degree. But if he just disappears off the face of the earth between now and Survivor Series, that's inexcusable. No, that cannot happen. But all right. Any final thoughts as we get to the last couple of matches here?
No, I'm Roman Reigns out right now.
Right, let's go. All right. So the women's championship triple threat: Asuka, Charlotte, Bianca. Who's your pick?
You know, it's crazy to say, but I'm going Asuka, and I don't think there's going to be a cash-in. I think there's going to be a failed cash-in. She's going to keep the briefcase, but Shotzi will get involved. Here's my reasoning, and it's crazy because I'm not a big fan of Asuka, the character, but I just think it's because if you put the belt on Charlotte, it's just like another, I don't want to say meaningless title run for Charlotte, but it feels like it would just be kind of forced. And I don't think you could put the WWE Championship back on her, or the women's, whatever they're calling it. They can't put that belt back on Charlotte right away because she just dropped it not too long ago at WrestleMania. Although that was the old World Championship, but it was on SmackDown. Kind of confusing how to follow the lineages, as we talked about a few weeks ago. But I just don't think the time is right for Charlotte. With Bianca, I mean, she just dropped it not too long ago after holding it for well over a year. So, I mean, I don't think you have to let that breathe a bit. You have to keep Bianca in chase mode for a bit. And as far as Io Sky cashing in, I just think you need a lengthy kind of run with a woman holding the briefcase. Because aside from Carmella, who was the first ever women's Money in the Bank holder, and I think she held it until the SmackDown after WrestleMania in 2018. So she held it for about, I think it was 8 months or so. Every other woman has cashed it in like 2 months or less. Like Alexa Bliss cashed it in on the same night in 2018. In 2019, it was who won it in 2019? It's escaping me now, but in 2020, Asuka won the briefcase and then was awarded the women's championship. In 2020, in 2019, Bayley won the briefcase and cashed in on the same night as well. Then you got Asuka winning the championship because Becky Lynch was pregnant. She had to step away. So then when she opened the briefcase, she became the women's champion. 2021, it was Nikki ASH, and she cashed it in several weeks after holding the briefcase. Last year, you had Liv Morgan cash it in soon after winning the briefcase. So, I mean, I just think that Io Sky should keep the briefcase for several months, if not well past 6 months, just because there's a story to tell with her and Bailey. They have the Shotzi thing going on. So it's almost like a process of elimination with me. Not so much because I think Asuka should hold on to the belt, but more because all the other options don't make sense right now.
So your pick is Asuka retaining. I'm gonna go Charlotte winning, but the reason is, okay, so she's my first pick, but a very close second is Asuka retaining. Bianca Belair winning is a distant third. I think there's almost no chance of Bianca Belair winning, probably next to zero. But the reason I say Charlotte Flair wins is that I think that her being a 14-time champion, they want to get it to 15 quickly so that they can eventually get to 16. And when would that 16th happen? Maybe towards WrestleMania season, where they could actually, put on a celebration. Maybe her dad comes out, all that kind of thing, where her dad and her are also, they're co-16-time champions. They like that kind of thing. That shouldn't be the sole reason that you change championships, but it is a strong reason with Charlotte Flair there. But of course, that X factor that you mentioned, Io Sky, and the Bailey thing, and does she cash it in quickly? As women's Money in the Bank holders cannot hold out more than like 5 seconds to cash in, and actually having a woman hold on to it longer than like you said, for such a short time, I'm going to say Charlotte, but then I'm going to say that Io Sky tries to cash in and maybe doesn't even have the bell ring because Bailey screws her over, or screws over Io before, or as she cashes in, her cash in's official, and then Bailey ends up screwing her over. And then you get a Bailey Io program, and Charlotte is still working with Asuka. And I've heard rumors also too of Nia Jax return. I don't know if that's true or not. If Nia Jax gets injected in here, she did come back for the Rumble or something this past year. So she is floating out there in the ether as a discussion. But I still think Charlotte does win, but boy, is it a slim margin of confidence. And that's what I think. So.
Yeah, no, I just, on the Io Sky front, I would like her to keep that briefcase past WrestleMania. Like, I think the art of holding the briefcase for 8-9 months is a lost one. I don't even remember the last person to hold it that long. Maybe on the women's side, it was Carmella, who was the first ever women's Money in the Bank holder. Even on the men's side, who was the last guy to hold it that length? I can't even remember I guess The Miz, but he won it away from Otis. So does that even really count? Everyone else has cashed it in typically by the fall after winning it sometime during the summer. So I don't know. And I think that with Io Sky, they could use the next 8 to 9 months to build up her character. And we talked about it last week or the week before, 2 weeks ago, actually, because we haven't done current state in a few weeks. But we've spoken about it recently that the women's division is in good shape right now. They have a lot of top-heavy talent, so there is absolutely no rush to shoehorn Io Sky into the women's championship picture before she's ready. And as you mentioned, there's a story to tell with Bailey. There's a story to tell with whatever role she's gonna play in this. Presumably when Dakota Kai comes back, there's a story to tell between Dakota and Io. I think that if you play this right, the next 8 months could be a really good build for Io. You have the top talent on the women's side in the meantime to tread water and then some. It's not even treading water. You have some good programs that you could have with Asuka, with Charlotte, with Bianca. If Nia Jax returns, there's no reason to rush it with Io.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm all for it. And what I would also like, and this goes for the men's side of things too with the briefcase, is don't carry it around all the time. Yeah, I want to kind of forget that you're the Money in the Bank briefcase holder, where you go several months and they don't have the briefcase, but they're still the Money in the Bank briefcase holder, and they only cash it in when they're running out to cash it in. I just think out of sight, out of mind, and if they do it for a longer period of time, that would be good. They don't need to carry it. Are they obligated to carry it around all the time? Every time you know what I mean? Is it part of the package deal? I don't understand it. I just think it's a missed opportunity where you could just kind of put it out of the minds of fans, and they just don't have to carry it around with every place they go. Like it just, I don't know. I know that they're trying to remind the fans, but at the same time, reminding the fans takes away the surprise element. So anyway, yeah. So again, I think Asuka is a strong, very close second, at least in my opinion, and Charlotte Flair. But again, Asuka is a boring champion. I'm sorry.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I think you said that too. She's so boring, and I hate saying that because she's trying. She's trying, like the face paint, the new outfit, the new haircut. She actually had a dialogue on SmackDown this past week that was more that she said in 2 minutes than in like 5 years. So she can speak more English than WWE allows her to say, which is the extent of nobody's ready for Asuka. It's the only thing we ever know of what she says. So she can speak a little more English than at least WWE leads on, and I think that is a massive limiting factor for her, that they're not allowing her to do it, and maybe they loosen up on that. But either way, if they keep Asuka as she is, she's so boring. I understand she's heel, but she's just... I hate it's weird to say, but she's a snooze fest because you know what you're going to get with her. We've seen every version of her that we could possibly see. There's no more layers of the onion to peel back with her because I think of promos. Not being able to cut promos is a massive problem. I don't care who you are. So either way, last thing I'll say, I think this match has the potential to be in the conversation for match of the night. I think we're kind of sleeping on that too, which the talent involved in this matchup is top tier. So I think this could be really a match that a lot of people are looking at going, but it could be match of the night. It could be. I don't think it will be, but it may be in top 3. All right, let's get to the last 2 here. Seth Rollins, Finn Balor. This is another not so easy one for the World Heavyweight Championship. Go ahead.
I'm picking Finn Balor just because I think there's more of a story to be told. And I think in the Triple H WWE, or Triple H's WWE, I should say, that's typically been the way that they book, that they always do what's best for the long-term story outlook. And I don't know if Seth Rollins is stale, but for me, I think that they could do a lot more with Finn. Let's be honest. The Judgment Day is the best thing that Monday Night Raw has going right now. And that's crazy to say. And it's insane what a world title could do for a show, because I don't know if it's a must watch because it is 3 hours and it is tough to get through. But since they reshuffled the deck and brought in a world title and switched up the rosters, Raw has been that much better. You have Gunther and Drew McIntyre feuding over the Intercontinental Championship. You have the tag team titles predominantly living on Monday Night Raw, and you have a world title to chase, and the Judgment Day have had their fingers in that pie since its inception back in May. And I think that because of the history of Finn Balor and Seth Rollins at SummerSlam 7 years ago over a world championship, the title reign that was robbed from Finn Balor, I think it just makes all the sense in the world for Finn Balor to dethrone Seth Rollins. And I think that there's such a story to be told with Finn Balor and the Judgment Day all kind of holding gold in some capacity. Obviously, Damian Priest just has the briefcase, but that does will presumably translate into gold. And then you can continue down the path of the fracture between Damian Priest and Finn Balor. And they can drag this on, if they play their cards right, all the way into Royal Rumble season between Finn Balor and Damian Priest. And I just think that would be amazing storytelling and amazing theater on Monday Night Raw if you just had Judgment Day dominating, but every week, bit by bit, with each passing night, you see that fracture going thicker and thicker, with Finn Balor finally having his world title reign that was taken away from him 7 years ago, but Damian Priest lurking in the weeds with that briefcase, chomping at the bit for his first ever run as a world champion. And Seth Rollins, could take a long-deserved break. It has been, 2 years running now that he's been one of the bigger workhorses in WWE, has been the top guy on Monday Night Raw going back to last year around this time when they didn't have a world title to fend off. And then you can move on to bigger and better things. So, I mean, I don't know. I hate saying to take the world title off of Seth Rollins just 2 months and change after winning it, but I just feel like there's such better of a story to be told with Finn Balor.
This is difficult. This is really difficult. There are strong cases for both. You're right. The Judgment Day is a absolute shining star of Raw. There may not be another opportunity to put gold on nearly all the members of Judgment Day. The Judgment Day have never been hotter. The fracture did start again on Raw between Damian and Finn, with Finn doing that 1 to 2 second hesitation that cost Damian the cash in on Rollins to beat him for the world title on Raw. So there's that started again. So the question is, does Damian return the favor and give Finn a receipt during his match with Seth, where a momentary hesitation by Damian costs Finn the match, and there's no cash in, but there's a that hesitation that costs Finn the match, and Seth Rollins retains. There's that argument, and to be honest, or to be fair, Seth hasn't had exactly a long reign with that championship yet. He won it back in May, so he's only had it for 2.5 months or so. So there's it's not exactly a long reign by any standard. So there's that, and then also we already have a massive heel champion on SmackDown, and the argument of, well, the World Heavyweight title was created for a babyface to counter that, of which I think they've gone way too far to the other extreme, but it was designed to have a champion that's a fighting champion and all this nonsense. So if you have a heel champion, while they'll be there much more than Roman Reigns is on SmackDown, it's still a heel champion, and you got that same dynamic. So there's that argument against it. Now, the argument for it is the one you laid out, which I'm not going to repeat piece by piece, but Finn winning a world title is no problem here. The symmetry of 7 years ago, I think they'll try to replicate that spot that injured Finn. I don't think they'll do it, or if they do it, I'm sure they'll do it a little bit safer this time. As WWE likes to reenact things, I think that may be the very spot that Seth tries to do, and the announcers remind us that was the spot, the buckle bomb, but it was on the outside barricade, I believe, is what tore Finn Balor's shoulder. So maybe they do that as kind of a memoriam to 7 years ago. And I love them bringing up the history of 7 years ago. I love when they do that stuff because it brings things full circle. And Finn has really been shining lately. He reminds you how damn good he is on the mic when the crowd isn't trying to go into business for themselves. The backstage promos, the locker room promos, all of it is so good. Finn is so good that I have no problem with him winning the World Heavyweight Championship. So ultimately, what's my pick? This is really tough. I'm going to say Finn Balor does win here. I'm going to also agree with you, but my God, is this difficult because both men have such strong arguments.
So you're going with Balor?
Yeah, Balor, but by a hair.
You know what? It's so tough because you laid out a good argument for the other way. But I mean, I don't know how much more they could do with Seth as world champion right now. Not forever, but just right now. He was the right guy at the right time to legitimize that world championship. But I just feel like given the landscape on Monday Night Raw, like, they could do so much more with Finn Balor. Like, look, I'll take away from what we've talked about or you've mentioned, and even Roman Reigns mentioned on SmackDown. If Roman Reigns loses, he goes back to being Roman Reigns. But then Jey Uso loses, and who is he? What's he going to do? And for me, I'm saying, like, if Finn Balor loses here, like, not to say that he's nothing, but like, it feels like all the wind will be taken out of his sails. It feels like this is the final chance that you can finally give Finn Balor his world championship run. Seth Rollins loses and he'll be fine. He'll probably take a few months off, well-deserved. He'll come back. He'll still be super over. He'll immediately be a top contender for the world championship. He won't lose his place. I feel like if Finn Balor loses here, you will not be able to re-legitimize him as a top contender for the world championship. And it took them a hell of a hike to get him to be back into this position. Because when he returned in 2017, he spent a lot of time in the mid-card, feuding for the Intercontinental Championship, going to SmackDown, coming back to Raw. Then he went down to NXT, came back up. Like, this has been a long hike to get Finn Balor back as a true threat to a world championship and in the main event scene. And I just think that if you decide to have him lose here, you will never, ever get a chance again to put him back in the main event scene. And maybe that's the case. Like, maybe they just feel like he's never going to be a main event player for them. I just look at the landscape of Monday Night Raw with the Judgment Day, the other competitors that could face him in the interim. Like, maybe you have Sammy and Kevin drop the tag team titles to the Indus or whoever, and they each take a turn feuding with him for the world title, as opposed to Seth Rollins. You would imagine that after SummerSlam, his program with the Judgment Day is going to be wrapped up, and I just can't really see a path for him with that world title right away. So I don't know. It just feels like everything is pointing towards Finn right now.
And also, outside chance that, I mean, if Seth drops it, I mean, what about that infamous Seth Rollins Roman Reigns program that we possible, right? Like, I keep proposing that trade, that like blockbuster trade announcement, Seth going to SmackDown and then Raw gets, I don't know, whoever, we could figure that out. But I don't know. I'm such a big proponent of Seth and Roman that that's another opponent that I would love Roman to get into, in late 2023 here. But anyway, all right, let's get to the final match here. Let's get to Cody Rhodes. Let's get to Brock Lesnar in a match that I believe does this have a stipulation, or is this wrestling, just plain old wrestling match number 3?
I think it's plain match number 3. And to be honest, it's the match I'm looking forward to the least. And that is because I have it on, and I'm sorry if you hear my cats fighting in the background. They're being very annoying right now. But I would bet a solid chunk of change that they are going to make Cody Rhodes win. And I know everyone loves him, but I cannot stand the guy right now. I can't. And it's not him. It's the character. He's a great worker. He knows the business. I wouldn't want him to be fired or anything. I cannot take the pandering, holier than thou character. And I know that they're going to push him for a victory. He hasn't won clean since coming back to the company in 18 months. And I really don't think that Brock Lesnar should be a stepping stone. And I know that Brock Lesnar is in the twilight of his career and he's done all he's had to do and then some. But I just think that Brock Lesnar is a valuable commodity and should keep his mystique and should keep his aura and should keep his legitimacy. And maybe I'm wrong, and I hope to God I'm wrong, but I'm so certain that they're going to make Cody Rhodes get the victory here, and I just can't stand him. And I know it's subjective, and I know from an objective point of view it makes sense, and he has more tread left on the tire and top babyface and this and that and the other thing, and then he could be a challenger to Finn Balor if Finn Balor actually does win the world title. I get all that. I understand. I just subjectively, personally, biasedly cannot stand Cody Rhodes, so I'm dreading this match because I think he's going to win.
Yeah, you're not being very clear about your position. So I think Cody Rhodes has to win this. I mean, especially if Brock, takes his little bit of a hiatus, which is rumored to be happening, and again, all rumors and innuendo. We'll see. But Cody Rhodes is much more the future of WWE than Brock is. We all know that, and even if Brock competes to WrestleMania 40 or whatever, it's the fact that Cody Rhodes is the top babyface on Raw and competing with Seth, of course. But Cody Rhodes right now needs that little bit of a push, even if you love his character or not. And I'm leaning more towards your side as well. The whole, I'm going to put I'm going to turn my back on everyone at home so I can see the faces of the people here. Like, shut up, bro. Like, I mean, like that kind of stuff.
He sucks. I'm sorry. He sucks. And I know that everyone loves him. I know that everyone bows at his altar. I'm sorry I cut you off, but it's just like for me personally, it's channel changing. If I find it, like, if I know that, or if I get a sense that Brock isn't coming out, I just don't listen because it's always the same garbage. It's just the same thing in his suit. His theme song pisses me off. His ring gear pisses me off. His bleach blonde hair pisses me off. His neck tattoo pisses me. Everything about him, aside from his in-ring work and promo ability, pisses me off. I'm sorry. Like, I thought I was coming around on him for a bit, but maybe it's because I'm just a big Brock guy and I like the mystique that Brock Lesnar has. And I like the aura and the legitimacy he brings. And even though he's in the twilight of his career, I think you have to keep that legitimacy with one of the best of all time. And like it or not, Brock is one of the best of all time. And I find it absolutely infuriating that they're positioning Cody Rhodes as someone that could beat him. Like, main eventer, sure. Future world champion, sure. But he's not. Like, I would never think that Cody Rhodes should be able to come back and beat Triple H, Rock, or Austin or whatever. And maybe Brock isn't in that tier, but he's scratching the surface of it. I don't know. I'm literally getting red in the face right now. I cannot stand Cody Rhodes. And what I can't understand is why people love him so much. I don't get it. You remember when John Cena called Roman Reigns a cheap bootleg off of him? Yeah. He is a bootleg off of John Cena, except worse. That's the end of my rant. I'm sorry.
This is great. No, I absolutely. So here's the thing. I have softened a little bit on the Cody Rhodes, a little bit, but then whenever, like you said, anytime he starts to, like, you're softening on him, going, oh, okay, like, all right. I mean, he is good on promos and all that, but the suits and the bleach blonde hair, the neck tattoo, now that you mention it, that does kind of piss me off too. It just, I don't know. It's like he's trying to be a tough guy when it just doesn't suit him. But nonetheless, I don't like the pandering stuff about he's pretending he's just one of us. Like, dude, you're not. We know what you're doing here. Stop. I think it has a lot to do with the way WWE envisions how they think babyfaces should be and act, instead of having an edge and not always trying to be buddy-buddy with the crowd. Fans respect you more when you're not trying to do that and just being yourself. And Cody Rhodes is taking the, let me tuck you into bed and give you a kiss goodnight to approach to the crowd. And I don't like. I don't care who you are. When you pander to the crowd, it turns me off instantly. It's I don't know why or why that turns me off, but it does. And that's not to say Cody Rhodes isn't exceptional in the ring. He is. And I think this match with Brock is going to be very good. And I don't know how long it's going to go. It could be a surprise ending. Hell, Randy Orton could come out and RKO Cody Rhodes. There's a lot of history there. As we think he's going to interfere or possibly challenge Roman. What about Randy Orton, going on to Cody Rhodes? It's just a wild thought. But as far as this match goes, I'm with you. Cody Rhodes wins in a hard fought match. I don't know if he's going to hit 18 crossroads to do it, but probably he'll do it and then do it multiple times. As he does with his finish, and lose, and Brock Lesnar will go into back into his forests and through the trees and hide in his home for several months and come back around probably Survivor Series or Rumble time is my guess. Maybe he sticks around, but I have my doubts. So this is going to be a fun match. If you're just looking at it from a pure wrestling perspective and not character perspective, it's going to be
awesome.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be awesome.
You take the personal feelings about Cody Rhodes out of this, and I think that it'll make it much more enjoyable. And I think also, like you said, if you change the opponent for Cody, I don't think you'd have such visceral hate for his character, at least a little bit less.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, to be honest, because I didn't hate John Cena to this extent. I was very indifferent on John Cena. I actually grew to like him more as I got older, which is weird. But with Cody, I think, because with John Cena, I guess I just felt like that was him. Like, even though I wasn't a huge fan of it, it felt genuine. It doesn't feel genuine with Cody Rhodes. I don't understand how to explain it. It's like I feel patronized when he's talking. I don't know how.
Like he's talking down to you.
Yeah, but he's trying to act cool. Like, it's like he's trying to act nice, but like he's talking down to me. I'm being condescended, but like he's respecting me, but he's not. And he has sparkles on his pants, and I'm like, what? Why? And I'm looking at his tattoo, and even the biggest Cody Rhodes mark, Jim Cornette, talks about how much he hates his tattoo. So that just goes to show you, I hate his entrance. Like, every entrance he has is like a WrestleMania main event entrance. Like, singing along to his own theme song, the coordinated pyro, the dry ice, like he comes out like it's like he sings along to his own thing. It's just everything about it's just so heroic. Like everything is just so forced, and it's just like, dude, like come on. Like I don't know. I guess I know that you thought you did select Cody Rhodes, but I thought I was coming around on him, honestly. But for me, it was mostly because he can't take a clean loss. Just have him take a clean loss. Because Seth Rollins took 55 clean losses in a row, including 3 to Cody Rhodes, and he's fine. He's one of the most over guys in the company. No, it either has to be by like Solo Sikoa interfering or him passing out from pain of the Kimura log. He can't just take a pin. Why? Who is he? Superman? Like I don't know who he is. Like we're supposed to just assume that he's like God's gift to wrestling because he went to AEW and kicked around on the indies for a bit, and because he's Dusty Rhodes' son. All those things together make him unstoppable. Like I'm sorry, I'll stop.
No, he's undeniable. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. It's nuts. I didn't really think that I would get this heated about Cody Rhodes.
Well, I think this is the best way I can describe it because I know the feeling you're feeling. It's not as intense, but it's there. It's like he's so self-aware of how he looks at every moment that he's thinking about how he looks in every moment, if that makes sense. It's like he's always thinking about himself in a mirror. Like,
yeah, like how does this affect me?
Yeah, like he's so calculated in every move he makes. He's just too produced.
He's so 2023.
If that makes sense. Yeah, like everything, like you said, the coordinated, the whoa, all that, which, the crowd loves. I mean, we're not going to convince anybody not to like that. It is, I get it. It's a very sing-alongable song. I understand. But it's like he's so self-aware of himself. Like
he loves himself.
Like where you can tell that in his mind he's thinking about how he looks in that moment instead of just being himself. And that the pandering, I agree, and just so produced in every movement he makes. That's the best way that I can possibly describe the feeling about that. So now we're gonna have all these people like, oh, you guys hate Cody. Well, no, we respect him. He is a absolute asset to the roster. He's really, really good in the ring. He obviously knows how to cut promos. It's just simply that his character belongs to be, I think, a heel. I mean, it's just, I continue to say that when he turns heel eventually in his career, hopefully he's going to be more effective, I think, than as a babyface, just because he's hiding it very well to most fans, but he's inherently unlikable.
He sucks. I hate him. Sorry. And I even have buddies who like are more casual fans now, but were really big fans 20 years ago. And like they'll always watch like pay-per-views. Like one of my best friends, he's gonna watch SummerSlam with me, and he always like keeps tabs on like the current stuff, but like doesn't watch every show religiously. And even he's just like, why do people like Cody Rhodes? Like, and you know what? As a heel, he would be so over as a heel with me. I would want to see. For me, if he would just, to be quite honest, if he took a clean loss to Brock on Saturday, I would probably be that much more invested to see him get humbled and then build his way back up. Like he could not beat Brock and he has to find himself. And that is the Cody Rhodes story between now and WrestleMania. If he just took a clean loss to Brock on Saturday, and I know he won't, we both predicted Cody Rhodes, but I think that personally for me, I would be like, okay, now I really want to see where they go with Cody Rhodes because he is a talented wrestler. He's talented on the mic. He knows the business. He has all the natural abilities. It's just this character that he has envisioned for himself drives me insane. It drives me nuts because it's so, like you said, forced and contrived. And I just think that if they would take a more traditional approach by seeing the character actually build itself from the ground up as opposed to just jumping on a moving train at 200 miles an hour and just push to the moon, I think that would fix a lot of things for me.
I'm surprised the fans stuck with him through being number 30 in the Rumble and winning the Rumble and then claiming he beat 29 other men and then just immediately getting injected into the main event. Like that I can't believe the fans didn't turn on WWE doing that. I mean, I just, that still baffles me. It was just, I don't want to go down that road, but I don't understand that decision. Obviously, here's the thing. WWE, if they were sitting across the table from us trying to debate us, they'd be like, well, listen to the reactions. Like, what's the success?
Right.
Listen to the merch, all that. And I'd be like, you know what, that's true. But here's the other side of the coin for the people that obviously have an issue with it. But yeah, I mean, it would be kind of, we wouldn't win that argument because of all the metrics and the crowd reactions. And he is arguably the top 2 baby faces on Raw. So,
and I know I'm in the minority, and that's what drives me nuts. And I just don't understand what people see to love him to this that's what I don't get, because in AEW, and I'm not a big AEW guy, I actually tried to watch Dynamite the other night, and I'm just like, this just really isn't for me. But in AEW, by all accounts, they hated his babyface character.
Yeah.
So is it just because there's that many more like children in the audience with their families at WWE events? Like, I don't understand how stark of a contrast there could be.
Yeah, I don't know. And I was thinking, well, you take his entrance music away and maybe that would do it. I don't know. I mean, people love his entrance music. It's a very participatory, part of his character. The whole "what do you want to talk about" thing. Every time he says that, I really want someone to punch him in the mouth for real. I mean, his stupid.
Did you see his first ever TikTok?
Did I see what?
His first ever TikTok.
Oh God, yes, yeah. Oh my God, oh my God. It just that to me, if I was to just boil everything down to that, where he just tries to be cute and talk, come up with a catchphrase, which I understand. You want to be a babyface, you got to come up with a catchphrase. But how does it make sense to come up with a catchphrase as a babyface that the crowd can't participate in? Like, they should know what the answer is. Why would you ask the crowd an open-ended question? That's the stupidest thing you could do. And, he thinks it's just going to catch on. And it also is just like, he always has to say it with a smile on his face. And I want to just punch him right in the mouth. He's like trying to be so cute about it. That part of it is annoying to me. I know some people don't care, whatever. That, if I was to boil it down to my frustrations with him, is trying to be cute with his catchphrases and his self-awareness that I think is off the charts. But anyway, all right. All right, so we'll close it up there, but any final thoughts on SummerSlam or things that we didn't mention that you want to bring up?
No, I just I didn't mean to go on 2 rants. I think I went on a mega Cody Rhodes diatribe and kind of a rant about Roman Reigns. But all I want to say is that I am actually, all joking aside, looking forward to this card. And I'm looking forward to the pay-per-view because it actually feels since last year, pay-per-views are fun again, and it feels like every single pay-per-view is delivering, and it's a pretty cool feeling that, like, when there's a pay-per-view now on the weekend, I'm actually excited, and I have friends over, and like, it's the way it felt for me like 15, 20 years ago as a kid, but now I'm an adult, so I get to have my fiance tell me how big of a loser I am.
Oh, I know the feeling. It doesn't go away. But and I do like the shift to Saturday. I
love it.
It's so much better. Again, if you're a football fan, NFL fan, obviously coming up in the next month of the seasonal start, it doesn't really interfere too much with that. Coming college football and all that happens, but it's better. And I'm sure the production team and WWE and the wrestlers, everybody loves it, because instead of just packing things up and going to the hotel at 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night, and then having to fly out to whatever city the next day, they get that buffer day. I mean, like, it just makes all the sense in the world to make Saturday the PLE night. So I hope this stays forever. I mean, I really do. So, all right. Well, very good. And any final plugs or social media you want to share?
Well, there's no plug this week because it is a pay-per-view week, so no retro. Obviously, my Twitter handle, or X handle, whatever it's called now, is ADaMarco25. And my retro last week was Batista and Rey Mysterio against Kane and Big Show from 2005, kind of paying homage to my old show rivalries. And I hope you guys were able to check that out.
Very good. Yeah, very much a retro show about a retro show. So
yeah, exactly.
Right. So very good. And well, you enjoy SummerSlam. Try not to watch the Cody Rhodes match, or maybe step away for 15 minutes or something so you don't have an aneurysm. And because we all, I think, know the outcome of that one. So, all right. Well, enjoy the event, and we'll be talking probably in a little less than a week.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to it on Monday.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.